Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third annual edition of A Week of Wonder Women Around the World. This week, every day, I get to start my morning with coffee, a smoothie, maybe waffles. It feels like one of those weeks. And I get to talk to women. And I always get nervous and excited all at once when I do these conversations because the vulnerability that comes out when these stories get shared and the types of things that emerge and the thoughts that you walk away with, at the end of a week like this is really inspiring. So I already know what's to come, so I'm already prepping the emotions, but also just the inspiration, right? Sometimes we need a pep, no matter where you are in your career. And what's special about this event is that we invite, college students, we invite, kids of colleagues and friends. This isn't just a prospecting event, which is what we're, usually doing in the marketing and demand gen world. This is an opportunity to bring a whole bunch of folks together, tons of walks of lives. And the other thing that's really cool is that we're representing all around the world. And so we do have people tuning in from different time zones. So thanks in advance to the West Coasters. Thanks in advance to everyone in India. I know we're sharing time zones here. So thank you so much for that. So we'll go ahead and kick it off this week with Amy Taylor and Dr. Adrianne Phillips. What's really exciting about these two is in different ways, they're both entrepreneurs. So they're both founders. They both have a slightly different background and very different ways in which they got to their entrepreneurship. But they resulted in kind of the same moment. I think I need to own my own business. I think I need to be in business for myself. So there's multiple avenues to get to that conclusion in life, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion. So we'll start off with Amy, who's got a big background in not only PR, but communications, and she's morphed that together. And not only does she represent a business that I'll let her share about, but it's really attuned to women. So the special element of the type of speakers that she represents in her organization are female voices. So Amy, go ahead and kick it off. Let us know who you are, how you are, and how is it that you got here?
Yes. Well, first of all, Paula, thank you for the invitation to share. I think as someone who professionally, represents speakers for a living, it's sometimes fun to be on the other side of it and get to speak myself and to share about my agency, Loud Management, and why it's so important for me to amplify, the women of my agency and their thought leadership. So I started Loud Management about 3 years ago. It is a boutique talent and brand management agency exclusively representing women thought leaders, authors, content creators. I'm very passionate about kind of reclaiming the idea of real influence. I know that we will get into kind of my background and how Loud came to be, but when I started in kind of the talent representation agency world 18 years ago this year, which is crazy, we barely had YouTube, no Instagram, barely had a smartphone. So I really love that I was able to learn my industry kind of in that time. And it taught me a lot of really important things that I'd love to share. And then also just to see how the industry has evolved and now all of the different platforms we have available to us to kind of share our stories.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting into it. And Dr. Adrianne Phillips joins us today. This is a special interaction. I always tell everybody that I don't connect with anybody on LinkedIn unless I've met them. And Dr. Adrianne Phillips is an exception. Her background and the content that she shares and the events and the activities that she participates in made her an ad before meeting her. And I got the pleasure of meeting her in preparation for this event. So LinkedIn and online networking does work. So Dr. Adrianne Phillips, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about the human behind the doctor and how you got here.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Paula. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and share a little bit more about my background and my journey to entrepreneurship. So I am actually a military combat veteran, so a little bit of a different journey in terms of stumbling upon business. I joined the military at 17 years old, so right out of high school, 2 weeks after graduating high school. And I kind of stumbled upon business out of necessity after getting out of the military, which I'm happy to share a little bit more about. But my first company was in travel and events. I decided to become a travel agent. Again, it was a chance opportunity. And since then, I've launched 2 additional for-profit companies and 1 nonprofit organization. Currently, my main focus is in advisory advisement and consulting. I completed my doctorate in business intelligence, and my research was focused on pricing optimization using AI. So very relevant to today's time. I always say I'm a non-technologist with a technology focus, but specifically around business. Business has been my passion for a very, very long time, and I especially love doing mission-driven work. So organizations that have some kind of purpose beyond just making a dollar. That definitely fuels me. So super excited to be here. Happy to dive in and share some more, hopefully valuable information that can help you guys out on your own journey.
Thanks so much for that. And I'll boomerang right back to you because, we did, talk about the human that becomes the person that decides to have that interest in business, but there's always an origin story. And yours is colorful and so interesting. And so please just tell us a little bit about how that incongruent path led you to where you are.
Absolutely. So getting out of the military, I started my preparation process about 6 months prior. The military has a really great program called the Transition Assistance Program, which is really intended to prepare service members to become civilians again. So understanding like the benefits and resources that are available to us. And so I navigated all of that. But the problem was that I had no desire to be a police officer anymore, which is what I did in the military. I really wanted to transition into something new. And unfortunately, I made the decision of doing this right before the recession of 2008. So economically, things were extremely rough. I had been very siloed in the military. You're in your own little bubble, if you will, when you're in service, and you really don't understand, like, hey, market conditions can impact the availability of jobs. And so I was just floundering. I was trying to find something. Me and Craigslist were best friends. I was looking for babysitting jobs and commission-based jobs. And then somebody ended up telling me about travel, and I loved travel. I had been traveling since I was very young, and they kind of introduced me to an opportunity to become a travel agent and help other people plan and organize their travel, which was something that I would do anyways. And so it was a chance opportunity because I wasn't finding work at that point. And they're like, hey, by the way, being an independent contractor means that you're technically a business owner. You own and operate business on your own. And so that opened up a whole new can of worms in terms of trying to just understand, what does it mean to have a business? What does that look like from tax purposes? Nobody's going to be giving me a paycheck, so I have to figure out how to make some money. But that's how I stumbled upon my first kind of business opportunity.
That's fantastic. And Amy, how about you? You had a lot of success in some known magazines, publications. Your career was taking off, if not at the peak of your career. And so what gave you that urge and that push to create Loud?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Adrianne, what you're bringing up a lot of feels for me of like those first moments of like starting my business as well, and just all of those things that you just don't like, you don't know what you don't know, but you go into it sort of naively and just courageously and figure it out. And mine is kind of similar in terms of like a big life transition is when I started my business. I was working for Success Magazine at the time. So I love when people use the word success, because I joke at myself that I was fired from Success twice, because I actually was fired from Success Magazine, not once, but twice. And I'm sure we'll dig into that a bit more as well. But the first time I was let go from Success was in 2018. And I was also going through a divorce at the time. I'd been married for 10 years, all of my 20s. And that was literally happening at the same time. And this was a job that I very much loved. I, saw myself having a career there. All my best friends worked there. And so all of that kind of fell apart at the same time. And it was truly one of those moments where it was like the thought of filling out a resume or applying for a job, like just felt so overwhelming. And so I kind of just was like, okay, I'm going to just take a beat and see what happens. And sure enough, I started to have a couple of speakers reach out to me and say, hey, like we heard what happened at Success. How do we work with you? And I was kind of like, wait, what? Like, you want to work with me? And they're like, yeah, how do we make this happen? And so I started just kind of figuring out, consulting and starting to work with speakers on, creating their keynotes and some marketing copy. Again, this was 2018. So we were still, kind of in more of, a less influencer era, if you will. So there was still a lot of marketing copy and, branding, kind of the old school way. So I started doing that. And then I ended up starting my first management agency out of that called Taylor Talent Management. And I had that agency through COVID, which we can dig into that as well. That brought a whole new set of challenges. And then I actually ended up going back to work for Success Magazine after they were acquired at the end of 2020. And then again, not the best employee, admittedly. And it was just like, I was just being pulled back to doing my own thing. And so that is where I landed in September of 2023 and starting Loud Management.
And Amy, so there's something that often comes up whenever I mentor. I've done a high school program in New York before where it was like a, senior getting ready to do college. And the fun ones for me were the ones that were like, I don't think I want to go to college, and navigating that and what does trade look like, and, those alternatives. But there's always kind of a moment where, they ask, how do you balance it all, or something at home, even in high school, right? It's like something at home, or hormones kick in, or later in life it's like, oh my god, I'm a mother, or getting married or getting divorced. So they always ask the question from the perspective of balance, like how do you balance it, and over time I think you start to learn that it's more of a harmony, right? Like it's like there might be some dissonance in the background, maybe, but if you tune it right, maybe it'll work out, right? So how is it that in those times where it's like the whole world is crashing down, how did you find a place of harmony to where it actually worked and the bills still got paid and the company was opened? Tell a little bit about some of the mental checks you tell yourself, or some of the ways that you go about that, because I think it's less about balance and how is it that you truly get to almost peace or harmony despite the chaos, because that's inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's number one, it's a journey, and I don't get it right every single day, but I think when you are truly aligned and sure of yourself that, things really do just fall into place and they work out. And if they don't, how to just kind of go with the ebb and flow of entrepreneurship, because it is. I mean, no day for me looks the same, which for me, I'm an Aries, I'm an Enneagram type 8. Like I love like the chaos. Like I love that no day looks the same. I don't ever know what emails I'm going to wake up to, like what's going to come across my desk. And I love that. Like I thrive in that. But for some people, that's terrifying, and so I think in that case, as an entrepreneur, it is very important to put your own kind of personal operating system in place that works for you. And I think that's a balance of using tools, using AI, using all of those, tangible tools, the tech tools that are available to us. But I think there's also, a huge piece of like your own personal development. And I think even though, my journey at success came to like an abrupt end, 2 different times, I still was able to be exposed to so much, real personal development with, people who were just so smart, and just being at events and learning from people and, getting access to information, and I think that was really formative for me in terms of learning like how to kind of deal with, emotional regulation and how important sleep is, and, exercise, and just kind of like all those things that we know are good habits, but I actually like studied them and, try to implement them in my life, because I think it is very, very important to remain physically strong and mentally strong. And that, allows you to show up stronger in your business, at least for me, for sure. It's a daily practice.
Yes, no, I think that's great advice. And Adrianne, when you're thinking about some of the things that you have, I mean, a nonprofit, even the filing and management, behind the scenes of a nonprofit versus a for-profit entity are going to have completely different elements that you have to understand, master, and almost be very disciplined about. I'm sure there's elements of your military experience that trickle into the ability to navigate and manage several of those things. So what are some of those tactical, practical experiences that those of us that did not sign up for the military at 17, some of the tricks of discipline, or some of the ways that you do that mental fortitude on your end, because we all have to do it in some way, right? Tell us a little bit about how you do that.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that the military taught me how to do was to embrace the suck. And so one of the things that I've learned throughout this journey is that you do have to love the journey. It's not about a destination. It's not about a specific objective. It's literally about the journey, the challenges, the ups, the downs. That's what makes it all very enriching. It's what's make it worthwhile for you to go through the process. And I always very jokingly, but very seriously say that if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. I am a very color coordinated, on the calendar, organized in a tool, project management, something somewhere. That's how I thrive. I like a good checklist. I like to, have that indicator that it's complete. And I am no stranger to delegation. So I have an amazing team. I do not do what I do alone. I had to learn how to do that. Typically, we get into business because we love, fill in the blank, whatever the thing is. And then it quickly becomes about the everything other than the thing that we love. It becomes about the marketing. It becomes about the accounting, the bookkeeping, managing people, all of the other minutia. And so this is why I say that you have to love the journey. And the only reason why I've been able to be industry agnostic, do for-profit, nonprofit, have all this diversity is because I love business, the core of business, the business operations, what you have to do to launch, grow, and scale a company. And that's what I learned how to really embrace, which is typically the stuff that people do not like. So my calendar is very useful. My team is absolutely incredible. Both for-profit and nonprofit, we have a team of volunteers that we work with. And so for me, I've noticed that my kind of superpower, if you will, is the ability to influence people, get people excited about your idea so that they're willing to show up and participate, because I assure you, you cannot do any of it alone. And there's a really, really great book called Burnout by Dr. Emily Nagoski. It talks about how to close the stress cycle so that you're not carrying on things into future challenges, which are only going to lead to burnout. So scheduling, organization, relying on my team, and then just really understanding how to manage my own stress and overall well-being.
That's fantastic. Wow, what great nuggets. I was turning this way because I was taking notes. I love getting the nuggets throughout the week. And so the other thing that, I think we always can look back on is find a moment, either inspiration derived from experience or maybe a learning pathway, a book suggestion like you just gave that maybe somebody shared with you along the way that shaped you. So if you guys can, take a moment to recall something like that, and Amy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, again, there have just been so many along the way. I think a very recent example is back in December, I actually ended up parting ways with my co-founder of Loud Management, and who has also been my best friend for 10 years. So that was kind of a first, that was a first for me. Like, I hadn't experienced that. And in my mind, like, we were building this together, we were building it forever, we were building it, we were on the same page about everything. And so when that kind of blew up in my face, like, December was rough, just kind of navigating all of that. And one of the speakers on my roster, her name is Dorsey Standish, and she is absolutely incredible. She is a mechanical engineer who had a burnout experience working for a tech company, ended up going to school and getting a master's degree in neuroscience. So now she's a neuroscientist, and she's so opposite from me. And I felt like at times in working together, we had friction because we approach things so differently. Again, like, I'm sure you guys can tell I'm a bit more free-spirited. I'm kind of like, everything's going to work out. Like, oh yeah, that's in my inbox with 10,000 other emails. And she's like, Amy, like, what's going on? Like, here's the thing. Like, and so I asked her to have breakfast because I was just feeling some tension, and I just laid it all out and like shared with her what was happening with my co-founder and kind of what was happening in life. And it completely shifted our working relationship. And she's actually like become like an accountability partner now. Like, we send each other voice texts every day. We check in, and funny enough, she has a new keynote called The New Humanity. So it's all about like how we just need to see each other as humans. And I think, again, there's all the technology in the world. I think team, community, all of those things are important, but just to allow ourselves to see each other as being human. And so she's become such a great kind of she's younger than me, but she's, she's kind of become this like mentor, accountability partner. And it's just so beautiful how people who are two opposites, when they just kind of let the walls down and allow for those moments of vulnerability, that it can really be something special. So I would just encourage people to look for those connections in maybe the most unlikely places, maybe somebody who works completely opposite from the way that you do. And again, it's like kind of filling in those gaps. So like, what are your strengths, somebody else's strengths, let that fill in your weaknesses, and just kind of let the ego, and the pride go, because I've definitely, made decisions as a business owner out of ego, and they don't usually end up very well. So I would just encourage you to look for those connections and those mentors and those points of inspiration and people who can inspire you that may work very differently from you.
No, and I think that's a really good point, because diversity of thought is ultimately the only human moments we're going to have, right? As we enter this ever-changing AI, agentic driven, workforce, lifestyle. I mean, how many people, don't talk to Alexa or, or some sort of, a voice agent, in their personal lives as well. So as we go there, that's why it's so important to insert human here. And I think the diversity of thought and meeting folks from different walks of life and different experiences is really what keeps us ultimately connected. And so Adrianne, you've shared some books. I'd love to hear a little bit about a mentor or somebody inspirational along your way, because I'm sure some of those decisions required that as you went along. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll say more so a technique that to me has been very inspiring, which is transcendental meditation. So TM is the only form of meditation that I know that has hundreds of thousands of research studies in terms of the positive impacts on post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries, specifically for veterans. But it is not a modality that is only for veterans. It applies to anybody. I learned how to start meditating at probably one of the most stressful points in my life. And again, coming from a background in law enforcement, having a couple of combat deployments under my belt, I do understand what stress really is. And so it really kind of dwarfs everything else in life when you've experienced certain traumatic events and things like that. And that's not to discount anybody's experience. The point is to have tools and techniques, or to Amy's point, sounding boards that can really help you just self-regulate. Self-regulation is so important, because every day is going to be a new challenge, a new opportunity. And if your emotions are always going to be kind of at the effect of what's happening to you, you're going to be on an emotional roller coaster. And being a business owner requires energy. It requires rest. It requires a clear mind. You have to be able to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. So TM for me has absolutely been a lifesaver. It's been something that I've been practicing for close to 15 years now. Really, really amazing. And outside of that, I will say that I've always had a good network of people. So, being in the military definitely showed me the importance of camaraderie. I will say that camaraderie and delegation are two different things. I had to learn how to delegate. We tend to be, as business owners, very married to our business and to our thing. It's our baby. And so we think in our minds, well, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself. But you're actually doing yourself a disservice by constantly piling things up, because we are not the best at everything. As much as we would like to believe that we are, we're not. And so, hiring to your weaknesses is really important. Another really great book by Dan Martell is called Buy Back Your Time. He talks about the importance of quantifying the value of your time and understanding that if your time, just an example, produces $300 an hour, then you probably shouldn't be spending time doing your social media content that you can hire somebody at $30 an hour to do. That's just an example. And so time management is a big, big component. As the mentor, I will tell you that's the number one area that my mentees always want to talk about, always want to work on. So just understanding how to balance, it's really your energy and where you're investing your efforts, and then establishing parameters and different kind of bumpers, if you will, to help you along the way, and just remind you that you are your golden goose. And if you're not operational, and if you're not showing up in a way that's going to be efficient and beneficial, then you're going to be a give no good to anybody. So TM, really great books. Mentorship can come through, just reading. It can come through YouTube University, right? We're in the information age. There's no reason why anybody should be going into debt or anything just to, establish kind of baseline fundamental skills that are necessary to be successful.
Yeah, that's really good advice too. It is important to think that way because I think 10 years ago when you were having this conversation, there was more of a mandate and even a stigma against alternative career paths. And now, especially in my industry, a developer can go so far, having context behind it, however, makes them go further, understanding the application of those task skills that they do. And I think that's sort of our responsibility as leaders to continue shaping the context, right? I make sure that my team doesn't know why, what the image is that they're making. It's why the image they're making that matters to the overall story that we're trying to tell, right? I think context is so important, again, in that human connectivity that we're all striving to have in this ever evolving AI world. One of the things that I always like to ask too, is on the other side of it, right? Is there an example that you can share of somebody that you helped? Maybe not somebody that you looked up to, but somebody maybe that you helped or that you saw potential in, or maybe that you hired and groomed, or maybe that you worked with along the way, but something that, you had a positive impact on them. And how did that make you feel? Because we don't often talk about, the other way around, right? And I think it's important to share that too, because that's what the aspiration is of being a leader, is to get to the point where you have those feel good moments because you have a nugget to share, you have wisdom to give back, or something kind to say, or an experience to share. So can you think back on somebody that maybe you mentored, or maybe a sibling, or somebody that came along, behind you, if you will, in the ladder that you helped raise up? Amy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think in my position as a talent manager, I have my team, my internal team that, is helping me grow Loud, but then I also have the speakers that I represent. So I'll share two just really quickly kind of on both sides, because I think part of my job is, yes, I'd love to represent the next Mel Robbins, I'd love to, represent the next Esther Perel, like these just like incredible women who, get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak. I'd love to have one of those on my roster one day. But I also have a huge heart for kind of what I call emerging speakers. So people who maybe have just, left a corporate job and want to speak, or maybe they're writing a book and they want, to amplify the message of their book. So I have a big heart for emerging speakers who have an incredible story to tell, but maybe they don't have the social platform, or they don't have, the money to do a hybrid publishing deal for their book. And so I think part of my job is to, really be on the lookout for, who is kind of that next great thought leader, inspirer, who maybe, on social media, doesn't have the metrics, but has the drive and has the message. And so there have been a couple that I'm working with right now that I'm very excited about to kind of launch into, the speaking market, because they're absolutely incredible. And so it's like, how do we build excitement and generate opportunity for people who maybe don't have a huge social media following? Because I think so much of our success in this industry is placed on that. That is what influence is equated to, is follower count and likes and, all the things. And not that those can't drastically help your speaking business. I still think speakers need to have a presence online, but I don't think it directly, impact someone's ability to be a successful speaker. So I'll be sharing some names soon of some new speakers that we've added to the roster. And I'm actually in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest right now with one of them. She has her very first panel tomorrow. So I'm just very excited to just help, put her on stages, and have her voice heard. So I'll be sharing more about that. And then the last time I was at Success Magazine in 2021, our team ended up bringing on just kind of a talent coordinator. We were launching a podcast network, and I was very heavily involved with kind of booking cover talent for the magazine. And then how do we kind of, have placements for, our cover talent across the podcast, across social, across live events. And she now manages my social media for Loud Management. She's an entrepreneur herself. She's had a digital marketing agency for 10 years. Her name is Liv Plu. You can see her on my website. She's absolutely amazing. And just this last week, we're now kind of promoting her to account manager, and like she's working on some very strategic opportunities in terms of PR and strategic visibility for our speakers. And she really loves the business. She has a passion for it. And I sometimes don't think that I have enough life experience or business experience to mentor someone, but I think because she's also an entrepreneur, like we've kind of almost joined forces, to just kind of create something even bigger, than we both kind of ever imagined. And so I'm trying not to let my last, partnership dissolution make me not hopeful about the future, because I'm very hopeful about, Liv really coming in and, potentially having equity in the business and really building something alongside her that, eventually, she could take over. And I don't have any plans to quit working anytime soon. But I think it's really exciting to have someone who you can see yourself in, from 10 years ago, and to have somebody be equally as passionate about what you're building.
Yeah. Well, and I think, passion breeds passion, right? So if you're excited
Mhm.
about something and you're seeing the potential in it, kind of like Adrianne was talking about, you ultimately get the opportunity to inspire and pass that along. And
Mhm.
Adrianne, what's a memory or something that you can recall where there was an interaction or something that you were able to give back? Can you recall something like that for us?
Absolutely. So I would say that first and foremost, one of the benefits of being a leader, or what I quantify to be leadership, is the ability to give back, is the ability to inspire and influence others. That has been probably one of the greatest rewards for me personally, especially coming from the point where I was when I first got out of the military, being on the brink of homelessness, to being where I'm at now. And I've always been a huge believer that if you have an ounce of information that can help somebody else, shame on you if you don't share it. So I'll just give kind of my general approach to mentoring, because I've mentored so many people over the years. And I always say everybody is a diamond in the rough, right? Sometimes it just takes that little bit of a nudge or that little bit of clarity around a certain topic or area that they may already excel in, or maybe be already inclined to, that they don't see. And all it takes is a little bit of skills cultivation to help take that to the next level. So some of the primary areas that I focus on when I'm mentoring is first active listening and communication. I think that's key for anybody in any realm of business or career. It's going to be an essential skill. Goal setting and structure. It's impossible to know where you're going if you don't have a plan, right? And so I like to start with the end in mind. What is the goal that ultimately my mentees are trying to achieve, and how do we reverse engineer that? Constructive feedback and coaching, that's essentially the core of mentoring, right? How do you receive feedback so that you can improve? Relationship building and trust, which directly connects to opportunity creation and networking. I always say that at the end of the day, people are what get you opportunities, not resumes, not applications, but people.
Yep.
And the more people you know, the more people that can vouch for you, the more likely you are to have success, because you're going to have people speaking on your behalf in many different rooms. Emotional intelligence and empathy, that is so important in today's day, where technology tends to rule a lot of our interactions. I think that we've spoken about this at several points today. It's just the human element of things, right? Reminding ourselves that we are all people. And then lastly, just role modeling and professionalism, which to me, again, goes back to the mentorship aspect. Once I know that I have successfully mentored somebody, is when they're in a position to give back to somebody else. So I think that, again, paving it forward and keeping that momentum going we're all here to help each other out. And what a boring life if you're not giving back and contributing to somebody else's success. So I would say that that's my general approach to mentorship, and it's something that I apply as a foundation to anybody that I work with. And, I've had incredible mentors in my life. And so, again, I'm hoping that I can just pave that forward and give it to somebody else.
Absolutely. It's almost like the dues you pay, right?
Mhm.
In gratitude for those that, kind of paved the way in advance. One of the really cool things that always tends to come up on here too, and we've already gotten some great, book recommendations. And so when we pull the transcript, we always add the links into different, blog suggestions, YouTube Academy. Absolutely. Everybody always has their favorite podcast, or a different, video to take a peek at the taught them something. But I do want to get into kind of tangible and actionable. So from each of you, if you could provide, some sort of either a ritual or like a website that you go to. I know for me, I have my daily dose of, 3 or 4, articles that I read. One's, the Marketing Pulse. I read what's going on in New York, what's going on in LA, and then what's going on around the world. And I get my news from the Brazilian Journal on that international piece. But those just get me grounded to humanity, because for me, I learned over time that if I start with looking at my email or looking at the task that I'm supposed to do, my day begins very tunnel vision, and it's hard for me to get out of there. But if I expand and I open up and I remember there's a whole big wide world out there, there's so much more. And then I whittle it down to, there's my living room, there's my husband, there's my coffee, there's my dog, right? And then I begin to funnel in. That's kind of, how my trick has been. So I've shared those links along the way, because it's not from a political perspective. I know news can be yucky and ugly. It's not from that perspective. It's just like, best places to travel is often like one of the first features on, on this particular article that I read. So things like that, elements and tricks. And sometimes they are games that you play with yourself, but sometimes they are, tactics, but actionable advice. Because sometimes you spark something and they're like, oh my God, I never would have thought, there's a news channel that is, something inspiring, that I can add to my day. So what sparks you? What kind of actionable advice do you guys have of either links or books or people or podcasts? Adrianne, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I have trained my AI to have a morning routine. So every morning I start out with a quote of the day. I start out with my top priorities. My AI checks in with me in terms of the tasks that I was supposed to complete the prior day, so I know what needs to be carried over. And then I also go through kind of a mindset, aspect of it. So just setting my mind for the day. Where do I need to kind of set my sights? And then I'm going to say shout out to Angelia Trinidad. She is the founder of a really, really great planner called the Passion Planner. I met her many, many years ago. She became a millionaire at 21. She has an incredible story. So shout out to her. But Passion Planner for me has been great from a tangible aspect to actually be able to write things down. That to me is like my old school version of doing things. But I've had a Passion Planner every single year, and it's really great for like mind mapping. You can do, future planning. It breaks it down into weeks, into months. So you can literally track, your progress throughout the year. And again, it just gives me that moment of silence, that moment of pause, that moment to do something other than staring at a screen. So the combination of the digital with the AI plus the tangible with the Passion Planner to me is how I start my mornings. And I don't defer from that. I can feel it the days that I don't do that, and only because it's become habitual to me at this point. So the 5 a.m. Club, great book. I definitely recommend that everybody reads it. It talks about how to set essentially your morning and your routines, if you will. So
that's awesome. And I think it's about just being intentional, right? With what matters. I'm just laughing because for 5 years, working, actually 6 years now with Wonderbots, we've never had as one of our like gifts notebooks, because one of our founders believes in 100%. He could do everything, I think he runs the business from his phone, from his iPhone. Bhavyesh, that's you. And so never have we ever had notebooks. And I'm like, guys, but I have like stacks and stacks of competitor notebooks and partners and all, because I still write everything down. So old school and new school is definitely still the way I operate. So Amy, how about you? Some actionable advice, maybe websites or books,
Yes.
or a routine that's good for you.
Yeah, I have two things I'll share. And Paula, I love that you said the word expand, because that's actually my word for 2026. And I think that is both for me, personal and professional. And so one of the things I do for personal expansion is, I have a gratitude journal, and it sounds like woo-woo, it sounds, whatever, but I'm so intentional about it. And I think, as an entrepreneur, you hear no a lot, and you're like, I'd love to do this, but I don't have the resources, or I can't do this, or like, I'm working 7 days a week. Like there's a lot of stress. But I find when I start my day with just like saying 3 things I'm grateful for, it really like kind of changes just the whole lens, with which I see my day. And I think that I've been able to build a thicker skin through that, because it's like at the end of the day, like, I have my health, I have my family, I have my friends, I have a business I'm very passionate about. And so I think it's important to stay positive, because it's really easy, especially, when you're just starting out, if you are on your own and you are trying to manage, all of the tactical things, plus, the building a presence on LinkedIn, or making connections, or networking, or going, to in-person events. I think that all of that can become very stressful. So I think, reminding yourself all of all the positivity in your life is really important. And then I think secondly, for me personally, like I have to get out and be with people in person. So I go to a lot of events. I travel. Anytime I go, for example, to New York, like I pack my calendar with coffee, with lunch, with dinners, with meetings, just having that in-person connection. Adrianne, what you said about, people is, the people are who give you business, right? I mean, that's what creates opportunity, is relationships with people. And even in, Dallas, where I live, I work with an organization called eWomen Network that is all about, pouring into and empowering women entrepreneurs. I judge a speaking competition for them every year and answer all their questions about becoming a speaker and how to build, a successful speaking business. And so I do give a lot of my time to things like that to, empower people who have a message to share. And so I think giving back is super important. That's, all the positive psychology vibes as well. I do also really like, I mentioned Esther Perel earlier. I really like the How's Work podcast. So it's interviews with real coworkers, real founders, real investors. Just having really vulnerable conversations about what does connection look like now. And so I'm a big podcast fan, and I love to do morning walks as well, and just, listen to a podcast and learn a thing or two along the way. But those are just some things that I really try to intentionally do to just, again, keep myself like mentally strong and like out having visibility. Because I think if I'm going to be, a marketing extension for people who speak for a living, I have to be out in it. So that's, I make time to do that. And a lot of times it's, on my own time, but I put myself in the rooms to meet the people and have the conversations that move my business forward.
That's fantastic. And in this last 15 minutes, I wanted to ask you both about your online branding presence, and from two perspectives. One, how is it that you maintain, and update your LinkedIn, your social profiles that are relevant to your business and or personal life? How do you maintain your online presence, if you will? And then tell us something that we wouldn't know from your online presence about your behind the scenes presence. And I'm always curious about, how much is, shared versus not. I think you two both represent very transparent women, and I often find that most of us share kind of all the things, most of the things, right? I'd say 80% of the things. But tell us a little bit about your online presence. That always comes up in questions. What should I put out there as I'm applying for college? Or as I'm applying for my first job? What are the things that I should share? What are the things that I shouldn't share? I'd love for you to touch on that just a little bit, some actionable advice there as we wrap today. So Amy, I'll start with you. You already alluded to the pre MySpace era. So
yes. I know when I first started at the very first speakers bureau I was ever at in 2018, we would actually pitch speakers from their reels that were on DVDs. So we had a media manager who would copy DVDs, and every day at the end of the day I would take a giant box of like FedEx DVDs and send them out to clients. Like, we just would never imagine sharing information that way anymore. But I think, like you said, my brain is still kind of halfway in that era, and like halfway, wanting to utilize the tools that we have today, and how amazing it is to be able to share information so quickly. I think for me it is very exciting to have speakers who so openly share. And so I think it makes me want to do the same, but I'm also admittedly so bad at it. Like, I'm just being present. And so I'm so bad. My social media manager for Loud is always like, Amy, like, where is the content? Like, all these people were at this event. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I think I got like a couple pictures, because I'm just there, like, being in the moment and absorbing it. So I think it's always a balance of, building my brand and showing kind of that proof of impact of the rooms that I'm in, and the connections that I'm making, and the visibility that I'm providing for Loud Management as a platform for women speakers. But I think it's the other side of that is so hard for me to do because I'm just not good at it. So I do have a social media manager who manages the business brand. So you'll see a vast difference between Loud management and my personal Instagram, for example. Really trying to get better on LinkedIn. I think it's so important to really use that as a platform to start talking about what you're passionate about, following people that inspire you, learning from others, and really connecting and commenting. I'm so excited about kind of the way that LinkedIn is being used as a social media platform. And so I'm very inspired by that. I think also strategically, I have a website, I have a web developer and designer because that is not my strong suit. Technology is not my strong suit. So again, like hiring a team that, their strengths fill in your weaknesses. And so I do have somebody that manages that for me because it's obviously very important to have a professional, fully functioning website that people can find. And then I think also, video content with YouTube, it's, I don't have a massive SEO budget, for my little website. And so I think YouTube is a great way for us to be able to have more findability, for our speakers. So it's really leveraging all the tools that you have, that you can use essentially for, free or, very low cost. So, just start somewhere. But I definitely aspire to be better at all social media, but it is just not my strong suit. And in terms of something you might not see behind the scenes, I mean, by working at Success Magazine, working in events, I've, had the opportunity to be in the presence of some very, very great speakers, and I've met a lot of great people, but there's no photo proof. It's not on my Instagram. I think I do like maybe one post a year. It's just not my MO, and so I think I always tell speakers, like, be hungry, not thirsty, right? So like be hungry to connect and be hungry to be in the rooms, but don't make it all about that photo op or that Instagram story. Like, make it be a deeper connection than that. And it's not saying that you can't post about your successes and your wins, but just make sure that it's not coming across as disingenuous.
No, I think that's really good advice. And I think it's also important to say that even though you represent a PR public facing thing in a digital age, that you're not the best at posting either, right? So that's
Right.
perfectly acceptable
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
And so Adrianne, I'll ask the same question to you, and we have one in Q&A, and then I can't believe we're already coming to an end of day one. So Adrianne, how about you?
Sure. So I think it's important to really be clear on what the objective of using social media is first. So I'll say that to say that when I first started out on social and I started out on LinkedIn, my goal was partnerships, collaboration. And so for me, the magic was in the inbox, connecting with very specific people that I needed to connect with, whether it was based on their title, based on their location, based on their company, etc. So for me, it started out in the inbox. I wasn't interested in being an influencer. I wasn't interested in people necessarily finding me. I was interested in finding people. And so then I expanded from there as I continued in my careers and continued in my education. Becoming a thought leader, especially when I was conducting my doctoral research, became more relevant. So then I started becoming more public facing. So now posting was more important because being a thought leader means that you have to share your thoughts. And so in order to share it, you need to put it out in the world. So LinkedIn is my #1 platform. I have maximized my connections already, which is 30,000 for those who don't know. I didn't know that there was a cap. Apparently there is. And everybody asks me all the time, well, how in the world did you, make your LinkedIn as great as it? And I said, I started one message at a time, one connection at a time. I do not consider myself an influencer. Again, I had no special bells and whistles. It was just really always objective driven. What is the objective of me engaging with social? And I do my own content. So my newsletters that I do a weekly newsletter. Again, thought leadership is my objective right now. And so sharing my thoughts, especially around my research, is a priority. So I do have a cadence, a consistent schedule. So every week I release a newsletter on LinkedIn, and then I just marry that with my website content, with newsletter content. Now, what I do on LinkedIn is my own. What I do everywhere else is supported by my team. So I kind of create my core documents, my core content, and they take from there to create other subsections subsequent things. So this is not a one-woman show by any means. I definitely do have a team that supports that. And again, I only do it because I understand what my objective is, not because it's a trend, not because other people do it, not because LinkedIn is the thing. I always say choose a social media channel. Again, align it to your objectives, because every platform has a different kind of algorithm, has a different thing that it looks for. LinkedIn is not about necessarily posting every hour. We're very, X or Instagram, maybe it requires a lot more content, right? Because it's that viral kind of effect of attention. YouTube, podcasting, they're great for longevity, because you're going to come up on the top based on how many people view or listen to your thing. And so whether that was something that was posted 7 years ago, or whether it was something that was posted yesterday, it's all about the longevity and how many views and listens it has. So understand the platform that you're going to, understand what your objectives are, and align yourself to that. And don't follow trends, because again, it becomes exhausting. Social media is a full-time job in of within itself. And if you're not clear why you're doing it, it's going to become that much more exhausting. And if you don't have a team to support you, likewise. But keep in mind that we are obviously in the technology age. There are so many AI tools. You do not need a professional social media team. But also don't just plug and play, copy and paste, because the AIs can do some crazy things, and then all of a sudden you're saying stuff that you don't even realize you're saying. So keep an eye on it, but utilize it to your advantage. So that would be my
Definitely agree with that. And the other thing that I always coach people into too, if you're just getting started, with your voice on social media, is if you're sitting down and you're inspired to write a post, write 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, right? And then you can spread those out. If you're sitting down with inspo, just get everything you can out. It doesn't mean that every day you're going to have this thought-provoking, brain buster to post, every single day. So if the inspiration strikes, jot a few of them down. Schedule them out. Very simply, you can automate within the LinkedIn platform, for example, and schedule something for tomorrow or the next day, should the inspiration strike. So you can carve out 30 minutes to get it done. Again, if it is, I think, true to the objectives that you're trying to achieve. We have one question in the here in the Q&A, so we'll ask that of each of you before. But who was a woman in your life that helped shape who and where you are today? A person is the ask this time. All right. So who wants to take that one?
I can go first.
Yeah.
This
All
is
right.
an easy
Go
one for
first.
me. It's my mom. My mom is absolutely is my hero. She unfortunately has passed about 3 years ago, but she was just a spitfire. Her energy, she just always had a zest for life. She always had a positive attitude, very childlike spirit that I always admired about her. I tend to be a little bit more serious, especially because of my background. And so I always appreciated the fact that she brought that sunshine. And so she has absolutely been my biggest influence. And yeah, I would say my mom for sure.
That's awesome. Amy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely my mom, but I have to give this one to my sister. I have an identical twin, and she is my only sibling, and she's the complete opposite of me. And so I think growing up, as a twin, it's so awesome to never have to experience anything for the first time by yourself. It's never first day of school, where are we gonna sit? Who's gonna talk to me? We played sports together, we lived together in college. We're just so close, but I just think she is always my biggest fan, but she's also not afraid to hold up the mirror, and so I just trust her completely, and it's such an intense relationship. I put her happiness above mine. I want her to be safe and be happy and be fulfilled, and it's the same for me. And so it's just a really special relationship, and she's brilliantly smart. She's a mom. I don't have kids. She's married, has a kid, and so it's just been so fun to kind of watch our lives go in very different directions, but we always come back together just with that holding up the mirror for each other, not just literally, but figuratively as well. And just, having the ultimate sounding board who understands you, on a genetic level, that most people can't understand. So it's pretty special.
Yeah, I think that's what you should amend your "what's not on LinkedIn" answer.
Yep, that's she's my party trick. Yep, she's the best. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, let me take a peek. It looks like there was something else in the chat. With such busy schedules, how do you manage, the schedule? I think we talked a little bit about that, but is there anything else you want to touch on to directly answer that question? What advice would you give to help others maintain, that schedule or balance? Any last minute advice as we wrap here? Amy, I'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, I think for me, it's like my morning time is very sacred. So I don't always get up super early, but I always make sure I have at least an hour or two in the morning just to kind of get my mind right, where I'm not just rolling out of bed and immediately getting on my computer. I think working from home or working for yourself, it's very easy to have no boundaries, between work and life. And so I really am like fiercely protective of my mornings. And I think everybody in my life knows that. And, obviously there are things that come up and things that you have to deal with. And, there's kind of this element of always being available, but I carve out mornings for myself. And it just gives me the energy that I need to then really, be productive for the full day or like tackle, a full day of schedule.
Yep. No, that's perfect. All right, Adrianne, take us out.
I'll say use some kind of tool, some kind of scheduling, something. To Amy's point, be protective of your time, whatever you're dedicating that time to. And I would always say focus sprints are very, very effective. So that's literally a period of time in which you're doing one task and one task only. You'll be shocked at the level of efficiency that you'll have. So no pings, no dings, no checking emails, all the stuff. Put that away. And then lastly, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life harmony. So being acutely aware of what side of the spectrum you're falling on. Are you more to the left or more to the right, and adjusting accordingly? So
Yep. Totally agree. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you again, Adrianne and Amy, for your time. We will be sharing the recording of every day's session with everybody, as well as getting snippets from some of the awesome nuggets and actionable little pieces of information that you guys have given us along the way. Thanks so much, Amy and Adrianne. Thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.